Hi, and welcome to session 2. Feel free to, in the chat box, say where you're logging in from. I'm always curious to know where folks are checking in from. I'm also going to paste in the chat box a Google Doc where we'll be meeting to talk about some stuff. Let me make sure that there's not editing privileges, because it's crazy when people can edit, when like 100 people can edit a doc. So here's the doc we'll be meeting on. The Warriors. I know. Don't even tell me what's happening with the game right now, because I'm going to watch it later tonight. I've been watching closely. Hi, Leah. How's Brooklyn? I'm coming to you live from LA. I'm outside because I'm showing off, because I can be outside because it's beautiful. But yeah, feel free to type in the chat box where you calling in from. So if you hop on that doc, you'll see this. You'll see essentially what we're walking through here. So let me share with you, because some of you may not be able to access the Google Doc. So let me just share my screen with you so you can see it. I'll come back so you can see my face. But hang on one second. Here we go. Sweet. All right. So essentially, Nigeria, Bright. Wow, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And hi, Grace from Vermont. Okay, so essentially, if you missed the first session, don't worry. I'll give you a link in a second where you can watch it. Don't watch it now, obviously. And we talked about how to choose a topic. And briefly, we went over what's the difference between a boring essay and an essay that stands out. I talked to you about 4 types of essays. We did 2 little brainstorming exercises, essence, objects, and values exercise. Your homework was to use the free guide to go and do the essence, objects, and values exercise. I hope you didn't. If you didn't, you've got a chance to redeem yourself and to catch up. That's what I should have said. And then we talked about the montage essay, and I gave an example. We reviewed it. I talked about why I thought it was awesome, how it works. And then we did a little Q&A. If you missed it, here's the link that you can click to watch the video later. Don't do that now. Today, we're going to talk about narrative structure. What does it look like? How does it work? How are movies, broadly speaking, mostly structured? Then I'm going to share with you an example of a narrative essay. And then I'm going to share with you another example of a narrative essay right on this doc. I'm going to talk about, we're going to kind of compare and contrast these essays. And then we'll do Q&As for your specific essay questions. And then at that same link, there will be a video of that. Next week, June 5th, I'm going to talk to you about the activities list, why that can make a huge difference in your application, the additional information section, how that can make a huge impact, and the YS essay, which some people say is even more important than the main essay. And by people, I mean like college reps say this. So I'm also going to share with you this little, technique, the strategy I use. It's going to save you a ton of time, like legit as much as 20 hours on your application process. Here, you'll find a free guide to the personal statement, the one that I mentioned. And here at this link, there's more info on like 2 summer courses that I'm teaching that I'll share with you like 5 minutes on at the end of this session. But these are pay what you can courses, because for me, #accessibility. I really believe that people should have access to resources like this, no matter whether they can pay or not. So I'll tell you about that at the end. All right, session 2, narrative structure. I'm going to move this down. But imagine this is like my whiteboard. And if Q&A, if you've got questions, just type them in the chat box. What I'll do when I pause for questions is I'll just copy and paste those right here in the order that they were received. All right, so here we go. We're talking about riding horses at school. So if you've got questions, type those in the chat box. Narrative structure. So let's start with what is narrative structure. How are most movies structured? Well, a lot of them begin with a thing called status quo. Status quo is our starting point. It's like, here's the world of this essay. And that might sound as simple as like, it was another sunny day in Los Angeles when all of a sudden, bam, something happens. And the thing that happens is called the inciting incident. And this is, in Pixar movies, it's usually minute 13. It's the moment Nemo and his dad are separated, right? Or the moment in Toy Story when, Woody and Andy are best friends. That's the status quo. And then suddenly Buzz Lightyear comes in. Sometimes it's the answer to what is the worst thing that could happen. But what is the worst thing that could happen? This is like, status quo basically establishes the world of the story. And then boom, something happens. Okay. This launches the story. Often answer to what is the worst thing that could happen? And in the case of Finding Nemo, the worst thing that could happen to a dad and son this is all I have left in the world is that they get separated. I say that lightly, like it's a nice thing. Raising the stakes is what comes next. Gives us a sense of why this was a big deal. This inciting incident, why this problem was a big deal. Okay, so this is like raise the suspense. This is why we should care. Okay, I'll highlight these in bold for you. If you're taking notes at home, good idea. Raising the stakes. Oftentimes there's a moment of truth, or we'll call this a turning point. This is when it's extreme challenges, it's when things start to look up. So this is usually the middle of the story. I don't think I need to explain what the turning point is. Like it's when the thing changes, right? It's when the story shifts. Oftentimes it's the thing that's surprising but inevitable. And sometimes it's a character choosing between a want and a need. I'm not going to get too much into that because that's kind of into the nitty gritty of the details. That I don't have two essays that really show that. That's kind of some advanced stuff, but I talk about that more on the course. And then the new status quo. How do we end up? This has to be, in order for us to like see change, see catharsis, this is different from obviously the original status quo. Okay. These are your 5 points of narrative structure. And most movies that you've seen, basically fall into this structure, use this structure. But I want to share with you, actually, let me share with you my face. I don't know. Do you guys prefer looking at my face or looking at the what I'm typing? Let me know. I'm just curious. Like, do you prefer doc, which is this, the document view, or would you prefer face view? Let me know. Feel free to type that in the chat box. Okay. While you're doing that, I'm going to paste an essay, and then we're going to discuss it. And I want you to look and see if you can spot the elements of narrative structure. So this is sample essay number 1. Okay. Let's see what folks said. Face typing, both typing your face. It's pretty mixed. Okay. I don't care which one. All right. I'm going to do this because there are enough people saying typing. You can kind of see my face in the bottom. So I'm going to do this view. Okay. Hi, you can still see my face. And you can hear the dogs barking next door. Cool. Sorry. They'll stop. All right. So here are the elements. Let's see if we can spot them. Status quo, inciting incident, raising the stakes, moment of truth or turning point, and new status quo. Don't worry, I'll pause and I will I'll give you I'll give you hints as we're going. Okay. At 6 years old, I stood locked away in the restroom. I held tightly to a tube of toothpaste because I'd been sent to brush my teeth to distract me from the commotion. Regardless, I knew what was happening. My dad was being put under arrest for domestic abuse. He'd hurt my mom physically and mentally. My brother Jose and I shared the mental strain. It's what had to be done. So here's what this essay does. I said status quo, and then I gave you an essay that has no status quo. The world of the story is being established at the same time as the inciting incident is happening. So this essay starts with the inciting incident. So the first thing that I want to tell you about this structure is that you can mess with this structure. So the inciting incident launches us. What is the worst thing that could happen? This student's father would be put away for domestic abuse. Let's see what comes next. Living without a father meant money was tight. Mom worked 2 jobs, and my brother and I took care of each other when she worked. Okay, raising the stakes. Now, not only is dad gone, but now money's tight. Mom has to work 2 jobs. For a brief period of time, the quality of our lives slowly started to improve. So some good news, as our soon-to-be stepdad became an integral part of our family. He paid attention to the needs of my mom, my brother, and me. But our prosperity was short-lived as my stepdad's chronic alcoholism became more and more recurrent. When I was 8, my younger brother Fernando's birth complicated things even further. So now raise the stakes. Now, stepfather, his alcoholism is becoming worse, and a baby comes along. As my stepdad slipped away, my mom continued working, and Fernando's care was left to Jose and me. I cooked, Jose cleaned, I dressed Fernando, Jose put him to bed. We did what we had to do. If the dogs don't stop barking, I'll move to a different room. So he's raised the stakes at least 2 times already. As undocumented immigrants, so raise the stakes. Now he's revealed that he's undocumented, and with little to no family around us, we had to rely on each other. Fearing that any disclosure of our status would risk deportation, we kept to ourselves when dealing with any financial and medical issues. So another impact of this was that he was undocumented. The impact of that was that they didn't talk. They didn't seek out medical help when they could have because they didn't have access to it. I avoided going on certain school trips, and at times I was discouraged to even meet new people. I felt isolated and at times disillusioned. My grades started to slip. Over time, however, I grew determined. Can you see the turning point already? Over time, however, I grew determined to improve the quality of my life for my family and myself. Okay, so here are the first 3 parts. Status quo, again, he didn't need it. You need the status quo, and an example of this would be if you Google the with debate essay of a student establishing the world. If we don't understand why this would be the worst thing that could happen. In this case, we understand why this incident is a bad thing, why that would be tough for anybody, for your dad to be arrested. So we can start the essay. So an example of this is like, Finding Nemo, a dad and son getting separated, that's bad. But if we knew that this, like years before, a fish had come along and eaten the mom and all the baby fishes, that's a kind of early raising of the stakes that establishes the world that makes that inciting incident even worse. Okay. So you can think of status quo as you're basically giving a context for why this would be a big deal. Again, if we know why this would be a big deal, just start your essay with it. Over time, however, and this is the turning point. So I guess I can mark these. This is the turning point. Without a father figure to teach me the things a father could, I became my own teacher. I learned how to fix a bike, how to swim, and even how to talk to girls. You can see the student's sense of humor in here. I became resourceful, fixing shoes with strips of duct tape, and I even found a job to help pay bills. I became as independent as I could to lessen the time and money mom had to spend raising me. So what you can see, if this were a parabola, is like we've gotten to the lowest point and now we're marching back up. And it's right about the midpoint of the essay. If you look at the word count, an essay is 650 for a common app personal statement. This is at 290, so it's before the midpoint. What else did you do? I also worked to apply myself constructively in other ways. I worked hard and took my grades from B's and C's to consecutive straight A's. I shattered my school's 100-meter breaststroke record and learned how to play the clarinet, saxophone, and the oboe. Plus, I not only became the first student in my school to pass the AP Physics 1 exam, I'm currently pioneering my school's first AP Physics 2 course ever. Now, you may be reading this and thinking, wait, isn't he just like citing his like extracurricular activities? Doesn't that seem like it's already covered in his activities list? Yes. But for a student who's gone through so many challenges and who had to build some of these qualities, confidence, resourcefulness, all the things that he lists, these all represent evidence that he's developed those qualities. So in this case, I kind of think it's okay. If somebody just joined late, let me just paste the doc for you really quick. Here we go. Cool. So these changes, so what? And I mentioned that last week, but that's a really important question to answer. These changes inspired me to help others. I became president of the California Scholarship Federation, providing students with information to prepare them for college, while creating opportunities for my peers to play a bigger part in our community. I began tutoring kids, teens, and adults on a variety of subjects, ranging from basic English to home improvement and even calculus. As the captain of the water polo and swim team, I've led practices crafted to individually push my comrades to their limits and counseled friends through circumstances similar to mine. I've done tons, and I can finally say I'm proud of that. But so what? I'm excited to say that there's much I have yet to do. I haven't danced the tango, solved a Rubik's Cube, explored how perpetual motion might fuel space exploration, or seen the World Trade Center. And I've yet to see the person that Fernando will become. I'll do as much as I can from now on, not because I have to, because I choose to. So, the simple 3 parts of this structure. I've mentioned 5, but really the student is answering this. 1, what challenge did you face? 2, what did you do about it? 3, what did you learn? Those are the simple 3 questions to answer for the narrative structure in about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Okay. Now, I love this essay. I love this essay primarily because I ask you guys, what values can you see in this essay? And in order to find that, I'm just going to Google values exercise. Check this out. Click the first link. And then I'm going to paste this into the chat box so you'll have it in front of you. Go ahead and click it, or you can look up here on the screen. Which values, type them in the chat box, do you feel like this student is demonstrating through this essay? So you'll have to obviously click on the Google Doc in order to be able to see it. What values do you see, and where do you see them? Resilience. Yeah, Holly, I get that totally. Honesty, vulnerability, huge, right? Revealing that he's undocumented, for example. Family, yeah, strong connection to family. Responsible, compassionate toward his mom. Resourceful, yep. Perseverant, yeah, perseverance, hardworking. Family comes up again. I love the resourcefulness too. Leadership, hugely, right? Captain of the water polo team, counseling friends. Self-discipline, strength, community, yeah, commitment to community, helping other students, apply to college. Personal development, for sure. There's such a range of values in this. Meaningful work, yeah. Look again at the essay. I mean, you can even from like, let's see, even from that, I mean, when it really starts, it's like after the midpoint, right? Became resourceful. He mentions becoming resourceful. Humor, sense of humor, ability to raise his grades, whatever you want to call that, working hard. A lot from a young man. Yeah. Collaboration, working with others, adaptability. Yeah, totally adaptable. Okay. Nice essay, huh? Cool. Let's look at another one. Here's another essay that I like, but that's pretty different. So I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to paste it into the same doc. Example essay number 2. This one's pretty different. And this essay was written before the word limit was at 650. The word limit was longer then. Students can write longer essays. So this one's about 900. So it'll take me just a couple more minutes to read, but I want to read it together and then we'll discuss. And I want you to also, well, I'll come back to that question at the end. Okay, here we go. From page 54 of the maroon notebook sitting on my mahogany desk. Then Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Genesis 4:13. Here's a secret that no one in my family knows. I shot my brother when I was 6. Luckily, it was a BB gun. But to this day, my older brother Jonathan does not know who shot him. And I've finally promised myself to confess this 11-year-old secret to him after I write this essay. Okay. I don't even call that the status quo yet. This is just the opening moment. So this is like pre-status quo. You know, in movies, like they have like a voiceover, and it's like they're just giving you something like a quote, and there you hear like voiceover. This is that start. Okay, we haven't really gotten into the status quo yet. The truth is, I was always jealous of my brother. Now we're kind of getting into status quo. I was always jealous of my brother. I'm going to mark these for you. This is the world of the essay. Our grandparents, with whom we lived as children in Daegu, a rural city in South Korea, showered my brother with endless accolades. He was bright, athletic, and charismatic. So this is more of the status quo, right? Here's the family dynamic. Grandparents love the other brother. "Why can't you be more like John?" my grandmother used to nag, pointing at me with a carrot stick. To me, John was just cocky. He'd scoff at me when he'd beat me in basketball, and when he brought home his painting of Bambi with a teacher's sticker, "awesome," on top, he'd make copies up and showcase them on the refrigerator door. But I retreated to my desk where a pile of "please draw this again and bring it to me tomorrow" papers lay, desperate for immediate treatment. Later, I even refused to attend the same elementary school and wouldn't even eat meals with him. Now, if this were an essay that were written this year, I would say we can shorten some of those details. Essentially, the gist of it is he was jealous of his brother. His brother was in some ways like outshining him, and the grandparents were giving him lots of love for that. Deep down, I knew I had to get the chip off my shoulder, but I didn't know how. That is until March 11th, 2001. So there are a couple things strategically that this author's doing. He's raising some questions at the start of this essay. Why did he shoot his brother? Did his brother die? What happened? What's going to happen when he tells his brother at the end about at the end, after I write this essay? Are we even going to find out how his brother reacted? So there are all these questions that it's raising for us, and they're interesting questions. And that's one important key to the narrative structure. In the other essay we saw, that question at the beginning, well, what's going to happen to this guy now that his dad has been put under arrest for domestic abuse? And then it gets harder and harder. How is he going to get out of this situation? That's what creates for a compelling narrative essay. So deep down, he says, I knew I had to get the chip on my shoulder. I didn't know how. That is until March 11th, 2001. He's setting up the inciting incident. That day, he says around 6 o'clock, and it raises a question. What happened that day? Juvenile combatants appeared in Kyung Mountain for their weekly battle, cheeks smeared in mud and empty BB guns in their hands. Great image, right? The Korean War game was simple. To kill your opponent, you had to shout "pow" before he did. Once we situated ourselves, our captain blew the pinky whistle, and the war began. My friend Min Young and I hid behind a willow tree, eagerly awaiting our orders. And again, if this were a shorter essay, 650 words, he could have trimmed some of these details. Beside us, our comrades were dying, each falling to the ground, crying in agony, their hands clasping their quote-unquote wounds. Suddenly, a wish for heroism surged within me. I grabbed Min Young's arms and rushed towards the enemy's headquarters, disobeying our orders to remain sentry duty. To tip the tide of the war, he says, I had to kill their captain. We infiltrated the enemy lines, narrowly dodging each attack. We then cleared the pillars of asparagus ferns until the captain's lair came into view. I quickly pulled my clueless friend back into the bush. Hearing us, the alarmed captain turned around. It was my brother. He saw Min Young's arm sticking out from the bush and hurled a grenade, a rock, bruising his arm. That's not fair, I roared in the loudest and most unrecognizable voice I could manage. Startled, the captain and his generals abandoned their post. Vengeance replaced my wish for heroism, and I took off after the fleeing perpetrator. Streams of sweat ran down my face. Again, he could have cut some of these details, but it creates a nice visual image. I pursued him for several minutes until suddenly I was arrested by a small yellow sign that read in Korean, "Do not trespass, boar traps ahead." So just to reset the scene in case you missed it, this guy has thrown a rock at me, the main character's friend, bruised him, and now he's taken off running after his brother, the brother that he would ultimately shoot, right? So he sees this sign, "Do not trespass, boar traps ahead." And he gives this note. 2 summers ago, my 5-year-old cousin, who insisted on joining the ranks, had wandered off course during the battle. We found him at the bottom of a 20-foot deep pit with a deep gash in his forehead and shirt soaked in blood. "Hey, stop!" I shouted, heart pounding. "Stop!" My mind froze. My eyes just gazed at the fleeing object. What should I do? I looked on as my shivering hand reached for the canister of BBs. The next second, I heard 2 shots, followed by a cry. I opened my eyes just enough to see 2 village men carrying my brother away from the warning sign. I turned around, hurled my BB gun into the nearby Kyung Creek, and ran home as fast as I could. So now we've answered one question, which is, why did he shoot his brother? Like, we've gotten that context, but there's still some stuff we're waiting to find out. That's what the rest of the essay is going to do. And I wanted to point that out because if you've written a narrative essay and we're kind of bored, it's because we're not engaged with or not clear on what the question of the essay is. The question of why did he shoot him has been answered, but still what's going to happen is still engaging us. Days passed. My brother and I didn't talk about the incident. Maybe he knew it was me, I thought in fear as I tried to eavesdrop on his conversation with Grandpa one day. When the door suddenly opened, I blurted, "Is anything wrong?" "Nothing," he said, pushing past me. "Just a rough sleep." But in the next few weeks, something was happening inside me. All the jealousy and anger I'd once felt had been replaced by a new feeling: guilt. That night when my brother was gone, I went to a local store and bought a piece of chocolate taffy, his favorite. I returned home and placed it on my brother's bed with a note attached: "Love, Grandma." So this is a different take on this. Here's the challenge. What's the challenge you faced? What did you do about it? Sometimes what you did about it is like tying shoes, like learning to like talk to girls. Sometimes it's buying a chocolate taffy with a note attached: "Love, Grandma." Several days later, I secretly went into his room and folded his unkempt pajamas. Why is he doing this? Then other things began to change. We began sharing clothes, something we'd never done. Started watching Pokemon episodes together, hashtag gotta catch 'em all. And then on his 9th birthday, I did something with John that I hadn't done in 6 years. I ate dinner with him. I even ate fish cakes, which he loved, but I hated. And I didn't complain. Today, my brother is one of my closest friends. Every week I accompany him to Carlson Hospital, where he receives treatment for his obsessive compulsive disorder, raise the stakes, and schizophrenia, raise the stakes. Notice that the raising of the stakes can happen later, too. While in the waiting room, we play a noisy game of Zynga, comment on the Lakers' performance, or listen to the radio on the registrar's desk. Then, the door to the doctor's office opens. Jonathan Lee, please come in. I tap his shoulder and whisper, "Rock it, bro." After he leaves, I take out my notebook and begin writing where I left off. Beside me, the receptionist's fingers hover over the radio in search of a news station, eventually settling on one. I hear Leanne Rimes singing Amazing Grace. Her voice slowly rises over the noise of the bustling room. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. Smiling, I open John's Jansport backpack and neatly place this essay inside, and a chocolate taffy with a note attached. 20 minutes have passed when the door abruptly opens. "Guess what the doctor just said?" my brother cries, unable to hide his exhilaration. I look up, and I smile too. And that's the end of the essay. So what do you think? Let me know in the chat box. What's your initial impression of this essay? I like to pause at the end of this essay because it ends with an ellipses, a kind of ... It doesn't explain everything. And you're looking back going, wait, what is this? What does this mean? The prompt was topic of your choice, as it usually is, Gowrie, to answer your question. Anne says, this essay is so different, that's what makes it stand out. Cliffhanger. Is it a cliffhanger, Hannah? Is it? Because in the narrative structure, let me challenge this idea. Because I thought it was a cliffhanger too. But then when I went back and I thought, okay, first of all, and when I read this the first time, I was like, wait, that's it? And I wanted there to be more. And then I went back and I thought, we might have enough information here. Remember that status quo lets us know what the world of the essay was. So let me just go back to the top for a second. Status quo establishes the world of the story. What was the world of the story? The brothers at odds. What's the new status quo? The brothers, he looks up, the brother's excited. He says, I smile too. I know I'm kind of over explaining it. I feel bad. But the fact is they were at odds. Now they're looking out in the same direction. So there's something that's, even if we don't have all the details, there's something kind of satisfying about the change that he's undergone. Is this a good essay for college? Thank you, Dylan, for asking the $1 million question. Hannah says it's not boring like some essays can be. Yeah. So this is a great question. Do you guys feel like, so let me just post this at the top of the Q&A. Is this a great college essay or not? Is this essay number 2? I want to know what you guys think. And why or why not? Is this essay number 2 a great college essay or not? Liz says yes. Don't you love this kid? What do you guys think? Is this a great, Lisa says if it shows the writer's values, it is. Okay, I love this. Great. So here's my second question. Ethan asks, what values do you get from this essay? So here's some comments coming. Grace says, yes, it's a great essay because it shows how the person changed or improved himself. Gowrie says, this could very well be the one missing thing in this guy's application. Well, what would you say, Gowrie, is that thing? I'd be curious to know your thoughts. Benjamin asks, would an admissions person spend enough time reading it to really get it, though? That's a great question. Would the admissions reader comb through it and get to that ending and be like, wow, great ending? Or is the admissions reader looking for something else? Ezra says, yes, shows he's a good writer. So that's something we could put, in terms of what the value is. We'll call it writing, or we can call it, I don't know what we want to call it, but like good writer, right? What do colleges look for in an essay? Great question. All of this depends on what do colleges look for in an essay. So I love that you're asking these contextual questions. It's great. It's like the questions underneath the questions. So what do colleges look for? Because how do we evaluate if this is a great college essay unless we decide what qualities we think should go into a great essay? Would you like to see? So let me ask you guys, what qualities would you, I don't know, I'm asking you a lot of questions. You're supposed to be asking me the questions. See, in an essay. What do you think colleges look for? And I'll give you my opinion in just a second. Anya says it stands out and it's memorable, so I'd say yes. Stella, and by the way, there's not a right answer to this question. I just want to say that. I just want to give you guys some ways of thinking about the college essay and like kind of a paradigm, as it were. Stella says, I think it is because it shows his character, because he built a relationship with his brother. So cool, we can add that. Hashtag writing, here's another value, hashtag character. It shows that he was able to ultimately kind of get over his jealousy. Honesty, growth, certainly. And vulnerability, yeah, to admit that you would shoot your brother. Yeah, there's some honesty there, right? I always put vulnerability / honesty together. In a way, I feel like this explains how the essay shows the author's growth. Yep, on the same page. Family is important to him. Responsibility, creativity, interesting, and helping others. So yeah, there is some helping others in there. It has values, but Liz says more of the standout is how different story it is. It's good to get out of the formula. Okay, so there's something in terms of like, let's call that creativity. I think someone else is mentioning this, but the creativity in terms of the structure or the storytelling maybe, or, you know, something like that, right? There's something you can tell this essay doesn't feel like a quote unquote typical college essay. Gowrie says it's the importance of his relationship with his brother in his life and how it's helped him grow. Maybe. Is this too long for a college essay? Yeah, Anya, I pointed that out, that this is normally it's 650 words. This was 900 before the limit was put on it. But I think you could still kind of get the structure of it. He had this trouble with his brother. He shot him. That moment of violence, shooting him, turned into guilt, which turned into love, which ended up weirdly bringing them close together. So this is what blows my mind about this essay. And again, I just want to say that I don't know if this is a great college essay. And if the student was working with me now, like, I don't know if I would have been like, hey, this is a great college essay topic, because there's a particular reason, and I'll share with you in just a second. But it blows my mind that in this story, like, a moment of violence becomes a moment of love. And like that, and the way the student has written it is just beautiful. Is this a great college essay? It's a risk, I think. So Sarah says, how we contribute to the college. Yeah, totally. Grace says, colleges want to see self-reflection, grammar, style, personality. Yeah. An essay can't be boring in the first 2 seconds of reading it. I'm totally with you, Bryson. Holly says, I agree that it's great for demonstrating the writing ability and values. I think it's incredibly unusual and will stand out. Hannah says, colleges look for people who face challenges and overcome them. However, oh, good. I want a dissenting opinion. I think that it is a great college essay because it shows his growth, but there was a lot of information I think could be removed to more clearly reveal his purpose. I agree. So let me ask you this, and this is, I've only shown you 2 essays, but which of these essays do you think makes a better college essay? And if so, why do you think that is? Colleges look for memorable kids, says Liz. That great soundbite, that's what they remember. Sometimes that makes you an individual instead of just a name. I think colleges look for a thesis established early in the essay and a consistent build up towards coming to a conclusion. Miles, do you like these essays? And if so, do you see a thesis in them? Because I think you do like these essays, or maybe a little bit, but I would be curious to know where you think the thesis is, if you think they need a thesis. Because I don't think they need a thesis necessarily in like the English, AP English sense, but there is maybe a kind of thesis that's implied in each of these essays. But see if you can spot it. Holly strongly prefers the first one. And tell me why, Holly. I want to hear from anybody. When you say which essay you prefer, say why. Let's see. Bryson says, the essay can also be seen as a little dangerous because he acts out against his brother. How can the college know he won't do it again in the future? I mean, especially in this day and age, yeah, that could be a concern. Grace says, the first one was more straightforward. The second one seemed more of a narrative. So I think the second is better in my opinion. Okay. I'm about to tip the scales in a second. I'm just warning you. The second, says Liz, the first kid sounded too good to be true, especially with the psychological damage of having a father locked up. Interesting. Anne says, I think the first essay makes a better college essay because the author shows how he's overcome adversity and has also helped others. Okay. Having an essay be more predictable is more interesting. More unpredictable is more interesting. Okay. I like the first one because it includes more of his good qualities. Ezra, I kind of agree with you, but I want to say it to you in a different way. So Lisa's saying the first essay is better because it shows the student's perseverance, overcoming challenges, strength, will succeed. Yeah. So here's my personal preference, and this is just a preference. So I want to say to you, like, you can still prefer the second essay. For me, the first is a better college essay because while both of them have qualities of a great college essay, the first one to me has a key quality that's different. So here are 4 qualities of a great college essay. Okay, number 1, vulnerability. I think they both do this, right? Number 2, core values. I think the essay number 1. So anyway, let me say this. Like in terms of vulnerability, let me just rate them. I think essay number 1 has like scores an 8 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10. It's close. Essay number 2, shooting your brother, that's pretty close. So I think a 7 or 8 out of 10. I'm going to call it 7.5 out of 10. I think that essay number 1 is vulnerable in some other ways, like revealing that you're like these truths about his family, revealing this, that he's undocumented. That to me takes it higher. In fact, I'm going to call this 8.5 out of 10. It's pretty dang vulnerable. Core values. Essay number 1, I mean, you guys were able to list a ton in terms of variety. There were so many. I go 8 out of 10 on this. Essay number 2, there was some stuff. So we've got writing, character growth, vulnerability, creativity. I'm going to go 4 out of 10. And this is the main difference to me. To me, this is the key difference between these essays. But this is only because I'm imposing, here's what I think goes into a great essay. The third thing is insight. Insight into the person. Essay number 1, I feel like I get a lot of insight into what's motivating him, why he's done what he's done. So I'm going to go like 7 out of 10. Essay number 2, a lot of it's implied. So I'm going to go like 4 or 5 out of 10. Okay. And then finally, craft. Essay number 1, in terms of being well crafted, it's great. The crafting is great. 6 or 7 out of 10. I'm being hardcore by calling it a 6. So I'll call it a 7. Essay number 2, the craft, I mean, 10 out of 10, right? Like 9 out of 10. Can you get better? I guess you could get better. So like, to me, this is so beautifully crafted. And that's one thing that I think you guys are responding to. It's like, it's beautifully written. It's beautifully structured. It's interesting. The images are there. But for my money, when it comes to writing a great essay, the core values are where it's at. And that to me is what makes essay 1 better than essay 2. Again, feel free to disagree. But if you do disagree, I would ask, on what grounds do you disagree? So if you feel essay number 2 is better, on what grounds? Sell me on it in the chat box. In your mind, what makes essay 2 better than essay 1? You can use these or you don't have to. These are just what I think goes into a great essay. Let's see what people say. Benjamin likes the shift of guilt to love. The second one's more realistic. I mean, they're both pretty real. It's got maybe more details, more images. Stella says the first one was more clear in purpose and revealing in character. I'm with that. The second was filled with creativity and a more unique look. Yeah, I mean, I think these are both great essays. I think the second one is a better piece, like a great piece of writing. But in terms of demonstrating core values, here's what I think. And I mentioned this last week. What are colleges looking for? 1, they want to know, who is this person? Can this person write? For number 2, right? And 3, will this person make valuable contributions on our campus and beyond? Maybe just the third one, like maybe that's the most important one. Who is this person? I think that's where the core values come in. Like, I feel like I know more about the first and the second kid. I know some about the second guy, but I feel like I know a little bit more about the first one. Can this person write? Both, yes, for sure. Especially the essay 2. And then, will this person make valuable contributions? Again, I come back to core values. Like, I know what that first kid is bringing. The second kid, I know somewhat, but I think I know more from the first kid. Okay, let's see. What else do people think? Lisa, I read Lisa's comment, demonstrates strengths of the writer, the first essay. I prefer the first because his strengths and experiences are highlighted rather than his bad choices. Yeah. Holly says both young men have faced similar issues. They've overcome similar issues, but I like the first one, had really specific examples of accomplishments, how he's matured. Yeah. What you'll notice too is that the first one takes a longer approach. Like the second essay is focusing really on a particular circumstance and this shooting incident and like the sort of the movie, the cinematic qualities of that telling. Whereas the second one is like telling a story that happens over a much longer period of time. My personal preference is the essay that takes a little bit longer, like that first style, where it's spanning, you know. Well, I mean, I'm wrong there, because now that I think about it, like even though they are focusing on that one moment of the shooting, it does, both of these essays span years. So I think I'm wrong there. I cut myself off. Let's see. Won't college admissions officers get sick of reading essays similar to essay one? Maybe, Grace, and that's a great point. That by taking a risk like this and doing something different, could that make you stand out more? Yes. Now it depends, though. It depends on, like, one of the things that this student needed to do is he needed to contextualize why he didn't have great grades, because he had some B's and a couple of C's, I think, in freshman year. So part of the purpose of his personal statement was to contextualize that. Now, not everyone needs to do that. The other kid who wrote this more, we'll call it the creative essay, the I shot my brother essay, was actually more like he had like a 4.0, good SATs. And so he was like kind of freed up to take a risk. Miles says, I do like these essays, and I think of the essays in a sense of a thesis, because I was usually great on establishing my thesis and staying consistent. Miles, you can throw that out here. Don't worry about the thesis for your college essay. Your personal statement needs to be a story that tells us something interesting about who you are, and then at the end answers, so what? And there are a couple ways to do this. So let me just zoom back and say, this is just one way of doing it. If you weren't present for last week's, and this is not just to Miles, but to everybody, watch what I said about the montage structure. Because the montage structure basically generates a bunch of stuff, and then we go, okay, what is the magnet, the focusing lens that we can drag over this stuff that's going to like make stuff stick to it? And suddenly let's say, for example, I mentioned this student in last session, but cupcakes is something that you love. And then it connects to all these different parts of you. So suddenly I've been playing with magnets this week. Can you tell? All these different values and essences and moments and memories related to cupcakes. So suddenly cupcakes becomes a great thing, a great magnet, a great, way to organize some of the stuff in your essay. Okay. And so I know I'm mixing my metaphors there. It's a focusing lens. It's almost like a keyhole that you're peering into, but it's also like a magnet. Now, that's for montage. That's not this. Narrative structure, and the main difference is narrative structure is like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and here's how that has shaped me. Montage is like, here are like 5 different things that have shaped me, and in that essay, the endodontics one that we looked at, and that's why I want to go into this particular career. But you don't have to connect it to your career. Let's see what other folks said. His thesis is implied, not concrete. Yep, that's good. Miles, you like implied thesis in a comment, in a personal statement is good. Let's see. What do core values mean? So core values is that list, Dylan, that I posted. And it's something that I talked about in session 1. If you take a look at the screen for a second, what are the values that are most important to you? And part of the homework for this session was to identify your top 10 values. Liz says, I like that the second kid went more out on a limb. The core values, the first could also be seen in his extracurriculars. Maybe. That's true. And again, there's no right answer here. It's just sort of like, what I said maybe too is like, do all the core values end up in his extracurriculars? Maybe. Do we see that he's resourceful as he is based on looking at his extracurricular lists with water polo and being president of a club? Maybe. Here's the rub. I just like the second kid better. Interesting. And I would be curious, Liz, like, what is it that you think you're liking better in the second essay? Any tips, asks Anne, how to write a good essay, even if you haven't necessarily gone through major struggles? In other words, do you have any recommendations on what to address other than how you've overcome a single issue? Yes, Anne. And if you watched last week's video, that was the topic of that in terms of how to write a montage essay. And the two brainstorming exercise will help a student generate content for that. And then the montage is a great way to do it, because you totally don't have to talk about challenges. That's only for the narrative structure. And if you're a student watching this and you're like, man, I don't have a great challenge, then don't use the narrative structure. Use the montage. Jump around in space and time, generate, as I said, a bunch of stuff, and then figure out, okay, what's one common theme that could connect all these things? Gowrie asks, should the essays you write be in any way tailored to the schools you're planning to apply to? Not necessarily the Common App personal statement, because the Common App personal statement is going to be one that's going to go for all of the schools you apply to. Your Why Us essay, which we'll talk about in the next session, should definitely be tailored in a very specific way to the schools you're planning to apply to. So more on that next time. Bachi says, what's creative about the second essay? Sorry, I don't get that. To me, Bachi, when I'm speaking about the creativity, I'm talking about the structure of it. So there's, what I find creative about this, and other people might have other thoughts. What I found creative about this essay was the opening with the Bible verse here, the vulnerable moment of revealing that this incredible thing at the start, putting him in a hole essentially with the reader, because that's a pretty dangerous place to start an essay from, I think, and then essentially digging himself out of this hole, why he shot his brother. I think structurally, I think the images are creative. I think the telling of it, like I'm really with him as I'm kind of watching the twists and turns. Other people might have other ideas about it. What if I don't have such a heart-wrenching story? Camilla, don't use this structure. Use the montage structure. And if you haven't watched that video, watch that video and you'll see what I mean. Is it bad if we write about something simple like a breakup? I wouldn't encourage you to write about a breakup, Marcus, because it's so hard to do well. It's just, there's a stigma attached to it. Readers are often, first of all, that's a common topic that students write about, but it's so hard to do it well. The stigma attached is like, what does a 16 or 17-year-old know about love? That's not my bias. That's the bias. I mean, I guess maybe I do kind of have that bias. I think about, but I'm thinking about admissions readers who said, please don't write about breakups. So you could, Marcus, but it would be really hard to pull off, I think, in order to show core values. Not impossible, but really hard. His writing, for one, his sensitivity, his vulnerability through his guilt, and his sweetness with his brother at the end. Cool. And for me, Liz, I look at some of these things. In fact, the writing of the first student, his sensitivity, his vulnerability, and his sweetness with his brother at the end, like that's what makes these essays almost in a way identical to me, because I think that the first essay has all those qualities. It's a different relationship with the brother, but it's interesting that like when you look at the end here, he says, I have yet to see the person that Fernando will become. So this is like his little younger brother that he's, and then also the big shift that I see in this essay that I really love is the core value of like, it's what had to be done. And he says, we did what we had to do. And then at the end, he says, I'll do as much as I can, not because I have to, because I choose to. And like, that's an incredible, autonomy, independence, freedom at the end that really moves me. So, okay, now we're into the Q&A. Is there a specific structure one would need for, is there a specific structure? Sorry, I lost it. One would need for the essay, like thesis and other things. Yes, Dylan. So the specific structure is the narrative structure that we just talked about. Don't put a thesis. I'm talking about like, if you're using the narrative structure, talking about it in a particular, using basically establishing the status quo. So each of these guys had an inciting incident, a moment that launched their story that they told about. Raising of the stakes let us know why this thing was important. Turning point was the moment they decided they were going to do something different or do something about it. The turning point in the I shot my brother essay is the moment where he decides to actually start being kind to his brother. And then the new status quo for the first essay, it's like he went from domestic violence, not having a dad, to becoming his own dad and raising his younger brother. In the second essay, old status quo, I'm jealous of my brother, can't stand him, want to kill him, maybe literally, to, hey, he's excited, I'm excited too. So that's the structure that I'm recommending for the narrative structure. Again, if you're doing a montage, and just to review what that was in case you didn't watch last week, what you need to first do is generate a list of content. And you can do this through some of the exercises I talked about last week, or you can, create a list of what I call the everything I want colleges to know about me list, which is like, here's a huge list of everything I want colleges to know, obviously. And here are lots of specifics and details and values. And what is it that would connect? What common thread could connect through these? So some of the examples I gave last week are, one student spoke a bunch of different languages. So each paragraph in her essay was how a different language had shaped her and how each one brought in different values. Another student that I worked with, wrote about cupcakes. Cupcakes are life. And then here are all the different ways that cupcakes are life. Let me think of one that I haven't already given you. Another montage example would be like sports. Like sports are life. And this one student is like, 2 years ago was writing about how, He has the SportsCenter ringtone on his phone, and for him, sports are all about numbers. But numbers, have to be interpreted with context. So there was a montage, and sports somehow revealed all these different parts of him. So there are lots of different ways to organize your content, but essentially for a great essay, you need some stuff and a way to organize it. Okay, the montage finds a common theme that connects everything. See last essay, see last session. Narrative. So the difference there is like narrative structure takes events and connects them causally. A led to B led to C. Montage connects events thematically. All these different things I experienced, but all of them are cupcake related, or all of them have shaped me into becoming a great doctor, or all of them, are somehow related to my obsession with Breaking Bad. That could be the focusing lens for the essay. Or a student that I met last week has a YouTube channel, and he's doing a series of videos to show different sides of himself, in the essay, not literal videos, but he's describing different videos. So the focusing lens is the YouTube channel. Let's see. Do you have to talk about one activity that you've done consistently? For me, I don't have a major extracurricular throughout the 4 years, but I'm a leader in many activities. What should I do? Yeah, I wouldn't encourage you necessarily to write about, Audrey, to write about an extracurricular activity. I think for your supplemental essays, that can be a great idea. I'm going to show you my face here just because I'm talking to you. Hi, I'm not really reading anything. So you don't have to. I would save that for your extracurriculars. So for your main essay, I'd say find something else to write about other than the extracurriculars that you've done. That's my short answer to that. I'll tell you more about that, how I'm going to answer more of that soon. Could you use the challenges way of structuring for each prompt, or would the montage one work a little better? There's no better. It's just, is your narrative clear, or is your challenge clear and compelling? If so, go narrative. If not, if you don't want to write about a challenge or don't have one, then use montage. Liz says, I love to see all of each of their apps and argue with you about which to accept. Great. We'll do that sometime. I actually, do that on my counselor courses. Is there a minimum amount of words needed for a personal statement? So the personal statement will be 650 words. Does the challenge have to be one specific event, or can it be a series of events that revolve around the overall challenge? It can totally be a series of events, Miles. Is there a difference from the admissions reader perspective from writing about something bad that happened to you that you couldn't control, like the first one, or a mistake you made, or a montage essay that focuses on strength? There's no right way. Again, I want to give you guys creative options. I'm not going to tell you this is the way to get accepted. It's not a narrative is better or worse. It's just sort of which allows you to talk about your core values, which allows you to show vulnerability, which allows you to show insight. I'm not getting into the specifics of how to show all those because this is a limited session and we've got a few minutes left, but I'll share more on that in just a bit. Yeah, what do you think would catch admissions officers, montage or narrative? There's no answer to that question. That's an impossible question, right? And so how do we watch last week's video? Miranda, the link is on the doc. It's right here. I'll highlight it in yellow. And I'll show it to you guys. Here's how you watch last week's video. What if we haven't yet overcome the challenge? Would that be bad to write about? Great question. Stella, you can write it. So you can do one of two things. One, just write half the essay up until the point of the turning point. And then ask yourself, have I had my turning point yet? Or am I going to have my turning point now? Because you've got 4 months before these essays are due. And you've got an opportunity to do some stuff to basically become version 2.0 of yourself and to work through some of this. There's an exercise that I would walk you through. Let me show you really quick. I want to share with you, spare me 2 minutes because I want to share with you info on my upcoming course that's coming up in a couple weeks. But in the course, I'll show you what I'm going to, let me share with you my screen, how you can walk through that. I just don't have time to do it right now. Okay. So in June, from June 16th to 23rd, I'm doing this how to write a personal statement course. It's run kind of like this, but I've recorded 30 videos. So actually 25 lessons. And I've got a bunch of sample essays, and this is, it's going to work for basically most colleges. We do brainstorming the first one. We do structure. I talk about how to revise, and all of the videos, you get access to all the videos instantly. Okay. So you can watch them. You can binge watch them as soon as you take the course. And then it basically runs 16th to 22nd. Here's the detailed schedule. So it's a flipped classroom model. So essentially you get access to all the videos, and your homework is to watch the first couple modules. And then on the course, I walk you through, like, I basically do this kind of Q&A and answer questions. So here's the detailed thing. Actually, let me just share with you this in the chat box so you can kind of see this, and then I'll get back to your questions in just a second. There's a counselor version. Let's see. Anyway, it walks you through basically all of the sessions. And then, and I'll tell you more about this next week, the week after that, I'm doing a second course on the college application, and I'm covering everything else. So I'm covering, for example, I mentioned the why us, I'm covering lesson 1 in this course is, how to write a super essay, activities list, additional info, the why us, 5 tips for the activities and awards list, the extracurricular essay. So essentially, and this also, you get access to all of the content right away. So it's like 30 videos. I've got like 30 sample essays, 300 colleges. It's a 45-page workbook. So essentially, anyway, you can read more about this if you want via the links. But essentially, this is the course that we're walking students through this process. But to answer your question specifically, Stella, there's an exercise that I do in the course called the feelings and needs exercise. And it basically helps you figure out, based on a challenge that you've experienced, well, what did that do to me? What were the effects and the impacts on my life? How did I feel about that? What did I need? How did I get my needs met? And ultimately, what did I end up learning from the experience? And so it's about a 20-minute exercise. And I walk you through it in the videos. And then based on that, you should be able to get some ideas about things that you not only have done, because I bet you have done some stuff, Stella, to like work through some of this challenge, even though you maybe are only, sort of aware of it, but also to generate a list of things that you could do. And it gives you a really cool action items list, a to-do list for the summer. So if you're open to it, I'd love to see you on the course. The cool thing about the course, by the way, is that there are pay what you can spots, which means that I have a suggested cost there, which you can find on the site, but anybody can take the course for any amount. Legit. Like I want this, I mentioned this, like, access at the front. Like I want students to be able to take this. So Sarah S., can I write that I want to be an astronaut, indicating I am a practical person using the montage? Yes, that can totally work. Where's the doc? Thanks, Anya, for posting it. The course cost, yeah. So there's a suggested cost, but it's pay what you can. And so it's open to anybody for any amount. What other questions do you guys have? I didn't paste them on the doc, but I'm here for another couple minutes. Is there a limit to how many students can be enrolled in the course, or are there unlimited spots? No, there are unlimited spots. What I find is like a couple hundred students sign up, and then like, some number of students sign up that is not all of them. And it ends up like over the course of the course, fewer and fewer people like, sign on for the live. That's just the way online courses tend to work. But, anybody can sign up. Gowrie says, I do a type of classical dance that I want to write about, but I don't know how to structure an essay about an entire activity. Do you have any suggestions? So we'll talk a little bit about that next week. So save that and let me answer that next week, because that's into the supplemental essay thing. And that's not dealing particularly with the personal statement. I don't encourage you to write about, say, the classical dance for your main statement. I would say save that for one of your supplements. Okay. Is there a specific date you need to sign up by? And, it's May 28th and the course starts by the 16th. So make sure you sign up by the 16th. So there's no like time limit on this, but I'd say, do it sooner rather than later. But I'm not going to be here like selling you guys and like sign up now, because it's pay what you can, so it's a whenever you can, but don't forget to sign up. Any other questions, either about the course or about, anything related to the personal statement? Next week, as I mentioned, and I'll show you this again. Next week we're going to be covering activities list, additional info, and why us. I'm obviously not going to be able to get into what you're seeing is like I'm kind of giving like little bits and pieces of the course, but I just obviously can't cover the whole thing because it's 50 videos, so I can't cover 50 videos. So you're kind of getting like the content from like 3 videos. Good, and I'm glad this was helpful. Sarah S. is talking specifically about career affecting me by not showing my personality. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Sarah. Maybe you could ask that in a slightly different way. I'm not sure what the question is. We'll take like maybe one or 2 more questions. Willen, you're so welcome. Thanks for being here. Any final questions? Is talking specifically about career affect me by not showing my personality? Sarah, if I get what you're saying is like, I think what you're asking is, if I talk about my career, will that not show my personality? And what I want to say is there's a way to write about your career that shows your personality. See video 1. There's a great essay that does both. Okay, I won't hold you here. I look forward to connecting with you next week. Come on the call, or I look forward to connecting with you on the course through the 16 hours that we'll be spending together. So anyway, be well, and thanks for tuning in.